Hello, and welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. Super excited you could join me today. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of Silicon Alley. And on the Silicon Alley Podcast, I talk to entrepreneurs, VCs, and top performers to understand what it truly takes to grow and scale a business. And today, I sit down with Nick Fredrick, the president of Rebar Technology Solutions, a company that provides subscription and recurring billing software to other companies. In this episode, we discuss intrapreneurship, what it is and how to become one, the do's and don'ts of the subscription business model, and how you can minimize your risk when starting any new venture. You'll hear how Nick convinced his bosses at his consulting company to allow him to start Rebar Technologies and give him a little bit of seed capital, as well as how you can convince your bosses to do the same. Nick also shares the benefits and downsides of entrepreneurship and when it is the right path for you. A little bit more about Nick Fredrick. Nick Fredrick worked at Affinion Solutions as the VP of Operations, where he oversaw products and services, as well as managed third-party relationships. The experience he gained in customer and vendor relationships, as well as cloud-based software, helped Nick at his next job as GM of Operations at Capra Consulting. Nick is now serving as president of Rebar Technology Solutions, where he leads the team as they develop a product and technology solution that solves the needs of companies for recurring billing and revenue solutions. And if you have not already, go ahead and pound that subscribe button so you get notified when episodes drop every Friday. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's entrepreneur-focused episode of the Silicon Alley Podcast featuring the Nick Fredrick.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying, I'll never leave this place.
Nick, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. Super excited to have you on today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to dive in because you are in an area, the business that you got, Rebar Technologies, is in an area that's really, really interesting, especially for entrepreneurs and technologists with the subscription business model. So really excited to dive into that today and kind of apply your lessons learned. But before we do jump into that, can you give a little background on who you are
Sure.
and how you came to lead Rebar?
Yeah. Well, it's a long and winding road, as many stories are. I'll try not to go too far back into history, but about 6 years ago, I started working for a consulting firm called Capra Consulting. It's based out of Chicago, has offices here in Nashville too, where I'm based, but really focusing on serving merchants. So those that accept retail payments between, a business and a consumer and all of the retail systems that support that. That's what Capra focuses on. My background was a little bit more in e-commerce and subscription. That's where I came from before starting at Capra. I worked for a subscription-based merchant for about 11 years. And then when I came over to Capra, I just started sharing that experience with other merchants in the space and started doing that for a while. And as we were going through that and, working in the ecosystem, all of the different vendors and players that there are, we really saw an opportunity really to take a bit of a different approach to subscription lifecycle management. So that's the billing, that's the payments, upgrades, downgrades, products, all of that kind of good stuff. But for the larger enterprises. So okay. Large corporations, mid-size on up, who really have more complicated use cases. Our industry has a lot of players, technology providers that are out there now. A lot of them are SaaS-based, right? That you kind of come in, sign up, and you're off and running, and those are great for startups. But when you kind of move up the food chain and scale your business, we find time and time again that there's more complicated use cases. Kind of more, vertical specific or marketing channel specific requirements that the market just wasn't meeting. So we started Rebar Technology to focus on the needs of those types of merchants, whether that's building purely bespoke, ground up systems and integrations, or using some of the pre-built components that we've got, albeit in a way that we can customize them very easily. So kind of the speed to market and scalability of SaaS with the custom fit that larger organizations need. So that's why we started Rebar Technology. Okay. I head that up. I'm kind of the founder of a business within a business. We're still part of Capra to this day, kind of a sister company. We operate on our own, but it's been a great relationship, and that's kind of how this came to be.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you've got a technology background. Have you always been interested in technology and payments? How did you wind up in this space, and what kind of drew you into the fintech space and the payment space specifically?
Well, it's kind of interesting. So I'd say that I've had two careers. post-college, post-education in my life. The first one was actually in the music industry, is where I started and spent about the first decade of my career, so to speak, out on the road, working with artists and really doing the technical management side of things. So I did audio and lighting, tour management, all that kind of good stuff. So I've always gravitated towards the more technical end of things for whatever reason, just interested me. And I loved playing with technology. That was always kind of a fun thing for me. I had a lot of friends who were songwriters and musicians, but I gravitated towards the technical side. So, after doing that for a long time and having a great time in my 20s, looking for a career that would get me off the road, I had done a lot of, towards the end of my career in music, been doing a lot more financial management. Mm-hmm. And that kind of took me down some more finance and accounting type opportunities. And so when I was working on some things here in town, when I got into that, I still tended to focus on things that were more systems driven, doing system reconciliations, writing custom reports, doing all those kind of things that the other people in finance and accounting just didn't want to touch at the time. I was like, I'll be the guy. I'll do it. I'm happy to. So, that's kind of how I found myself, ended up at a company that was called Affinion Group, which is where I spent 11 years. And, coming in from an accounting finance lens, finding myself more on the technology side and kind of growing up through that company, I ended up towards the end leading at one point the PMO, but also a number of different roles within IT, application development, infrastructure service desk, incident management, a lot of those different areas. And so, like I said, I didn't seek this out necessarily. I don't think too many people in payments and subscriptions say that this is the career I'm going after in college. They kind of find themselves there, but it was just because of my background in finance combined with a, propensity for technology that kind of led me down the road to Rebar here.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I'm curious, before we dive into more of the career stuff, any notable musicians, any highlights from your time on the road?
Yeah, I spent, like I said, about 10 years there and jumped from a lot of different artists. The first 7 or 8 years there were primarily in the contemporary Christian music industry, CCM industry. So did a lot of different ones there. But the last 3 years, I actually made the transition over into country, which I'm not a big country guy, but, I'm in Nashville, right? So the last 3 years, I worked with a group called Little Big Town.
Ah, nice. Yeah, heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was fun. It was certainly a fun thing to do in your 20s.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything that you really learned during that time that you've been able to apply that's kind of given you a leg up in more of the, I'll say corporate world, but more of the kind of traditional career, so to speak?
Yeah, there really was. When I started out, I was certainly the peon, right? I was the guy who was driving the truck at night and then setting up systems during the day, running the show, and then somehow driving at night. I'm not sure when I slept the first 3 years of doing that, but as I progressed, if you will, and took on different roles in the music industry, I started getting into more tour management, production management, things like that. And what I started to learn was, I was young and I was getting feedback was, I was always the guy who wanted to do everything, right? I wanted to know how to do everything. I wanted to be the guy that set it all up and ran it and whatever. And as I grew up, I got feedback that was, hey, you don't need to be the one to do everything all of the time. In fact, somebody needs to be taking a step back and seeing how everything's going and kind of redirecting here and there. You don't need to keep yourself busy 24/7. And so, it was kind of that advice. And, there was a couple specific incidents or opportunities where I was able to take a look at that and really take a different approach. And that has certainly translated through the rest of my career. Is I still like to be hands-on. I still like to get in there, the nuts and bolts, and, integrate with an API and, get into all of the different parameters. I still love doing that kind of stuff. But at the same time, trying to run a business now, it requires taking a step back, right? Looking at the bigger picture and figuring out how all of these things fit together. But you got to train yourself to do it, because so much of me still just wants to dive in sometimes and probably get too far into the weeds.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Nick. And I feel like that's a very common thing, especially if you're good at what you do, is it's hard to really take that step back and become more of that leadership type role and train other people when you're such a good practitioner. So
it is. It's a discipline. But you just find yourself sometimes having tunnel vision. So you got to be conscious.
Yeah. No, speaking of that, I'm curious how you kind of touched on it a little bit on the story, but you're an intrapreneur, right? So that's a term where, for those that aren't familiar, right, you started a business within another company. So can you talk about how you guys identified that opportunity and what that experience has been like from, building a company within another company?
Yeah, glad to talk about that because I think, while in my previous role at my previous company, never really started up another company, I did kind of run small companies within companies. At one point, I was responsible for our organization's production center. We were very much a digital back office kind of company, but we ran a production center. And so, that was almost a business within a business there. But here at Capra, again, I touched on this at the beginning. We saw an unmet need in the market through our consulting engagements. There's a lot of providers out there, and they have great applications that are really built to specifications that they define. I mean, they're trying to serve a need in the market, but inevitably, when they're trying to serve larger clients, they all have unique needs. Everybody's a little bit different, and SaaS tries its best to be all things to all people, but it really can't, right? At some point, somebody has to work around a business problem. And what we were seeing in the market was a lot of times the merchant or the buyer was the one being asked to do the workaround. And we were like, that seems a little bit backwards. But at the same time, looking at the alternative of going and hiring a dev shop to build you an application from a set of requirements in terms of timeline and cost, I mean, that was years and tens of millions of dollars. And for most, that's completely cost prohibitive, from a subscription billing system. And so we were like, there's got to be a way we can harness the best of two worlds. And so that's where we said, all right, let's build a system that in some ways isn't unlike the other SaaS providers out there, but let's build it in a very modular way. That we build all the different components individually, we can plug them together if we need to, whichever ones that are needed, but we can also customize them, right? If a client says, I love 9 out of 10 things, but this one thing, I need it to work differently, we can just change that. And so seeing that need in the market and having the idea for a way to do it differently was where, I was able to get together with all of the partners of Capra and just have an honest conversation about, guys, I really see an opportunity here. I think this is something we can get after, and have had nothing but support from that point forward. We talked about, the need in the industry, and we found some buyers of those kinds of services and products. And we've just been able to, it's kind of been a bootstrapped business within a business, but, having the resources of a larger organization there that we can pull from, even if that's, contract review, billing and payroll and all of those kind of things, that if you're just starting from scratch, you've got to solve all of those things that kind of Capra solves for me. That really allows us to focus on the product that we're building, the team that we're building, going out and, finding new clients and concentrating on revenue. So that concept, that Intrapreneur concept, if you're able to take advantage of that, has, so much upside to it.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point that you make, Nick, about letting the overall business take care of the things that are kind of tertiary, right? They obviously support the business, but whether you have the best accounting system or payroll system isn't going to make or break whether your business is successful. But it does from an entrepreneur that's not within another company. They got to figure it out, right? And along with all the other things that you're trying to solve. So you almost have a leg up in a sense, because you get to focus on just the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, just take something as, well, not simple as payroll, but like payroll, right? You've got to find a system to management, a vendor, the banking, the setup, the ongoing management of it, just all of the things that go into just that, they kind of take off of my plate so that we can just focus on what we do great as a business, the things that we serve, which coincidentally is exactly what we're trying to do with Rebar as well, right? All of these companies out there wanting to get into the subscription space or scale in the subscription space, and billing and payments aren't core to the product that they're offering. It's just kind of a necessary evil, right? It's something that I have to deal with. I need to be able to bill my customers. It's kind of pretty important to my business. So take somebody who's been there, done that, are experts in that particular area, let them take that off of your plate, which is what we do. You concentrate on what you do, whether that's, e-learning or streaming services or box of the month clubs or whatever it is in subscription that you do, focus on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to frame it. And I'm curious, before we dive more into the subscription specifically, what was that conversation like? So you'd identified the problem, and then you said you set up a meeting with internal leadership about, hey, there's this opportunity. Can you talk about that specifically for folks that maybe do see an opportunity in their organization, but are unsure how to approach that conversation. Can you talk about how you did it?
Yeah, that's a good question. It certainly wasn't one conversation, right? It wasn't one presentation where I walked to the room with the deck and walked out with like, hey, we're starting a business. It definitely wasn't like that. It was a series of conversations that certainly started with nothing but a conversation of, hey, I think there might be an opportunity here. Here's what I'm seeing based upon, what we're currently doing and what seems like an unmet need. So started there with internal conversations, had external conversations as well to be like, if we did something like this, how do you think the market would receive it with, people that we know, even those that might be potential clients of that product? And just got really good feedback, which just caused us to take the next step and the next step of formalizing this more, of saying, all right, here's a potential pro forma P&L, right? Here's what we think we would need in terms of investment to build out the technology stack and the people and processes that would deliver this. Here's what we think revenue projections would look like over 3 years. Just kind of lay that all out. A pro forma is nothing but a best guess, right? No one has ever put one together and then gone back 3 years later and was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what happened. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened in the history of business, but it at least gives you, some gauge of here's what we think and where this could go. And that's exactly what we did. And it just kind of, the ball just started rolling. And it turned into, all right, this can be a thing. Let's find a name. And, we went back and forth on what do we call this thing? And Rebar stands for recurring billing and revenue. That's how we landed on Rebar as a name. And then of course you got to get a logo, you got to trademark things, procure the website, all that kind of good stuff. And, it just kind of kept going. And while we were building that out, we had our, phased gates in place of, all right, every few months, let's kind of recalibrate where we're at, what we've spent, where things are going. And like I said, have nothing but fantastic support from the partner team at Capra throughout this entire journey. And I will say that I think that's because we've kept them informed. We've been honest and transparent every step of the way about, not every month is in the black, some are in the red, and kind of what the cash flows look like and what we're expecting. And, being transparent, living up to your commitments and communicating are absolutely and have been key to that back and forth communication. But I think because of all of that, we've had the support, and that's what's allowed us to grow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that makes sense, right? It's not going to probably be a single conversation. It was a series of conversations, and then your ability to keep them informed. Yeah. And here's where we are, and have honest conversations is obviously absolutely critical, or else, the rest of the team probably wouldn't be happy and would pull the plug. So,
well, right. I mean, anybody can put themselves on the other side of that table and be like, okay, somebody's asking me for money for an investment. What would I want to know, right? To be comfortable with the idea that you've got, where you think it's going to go. And then there'll be bumps in the road and things will change. But as long as you keep each other informed and solicit the feedback, right? Don't just talk and, have that, make sure that's a two-way conversation throughout, I think is key.
Nick, you've talked about kind of this process of starting Rebar. What were some of the challenges that you faced along your way? Because I'm sure it hasn't all been sunshines and rainbows and just an easy, smooth path.
It has not. It has not. There's been a lot of things. I think one thing certainly, I mean, we are a technology company, right? We're delivering technology. So deciding what sort of technology we are going to specialize in, what our stack is going to be, finding the team and building out this skill set to be where we are now, which is light years from where we were 2 years ago. And I'm sure we'll be so much further ahead 2 years from now. But just that learning exercise, I've been in technology for quite a while now. And when I started, I was very much dealing with legacy technologies. I mean, mainframes, AS400s, RPG code, that pretty old stuff, but very stable technology, right? That's been around forever in banking and financial systems. It's proven. And, now there's the cloud and everybody loves it. And there's so many great things about it, the scalability, the flexibility, the cost scalability that goes along with it. So making those early on decisions about what paths we were going to go down, and then building out, of course, we need the team that has expertise in those things. So finding those people, building up the skill set of the team that we've got, deciding what our DevOps is going to look like, how we deploy and manage resources in the cloud, PCI compliance, anytime you handle your card information is critical. So going through that, I mean, just every one of those have been a lesson learned along the way. And I've done a lot of those things in the past. So I brought experience in with me, and there was still a lot to learn, when you just do it the next time, because everything's evolving, right? Yeah. Even AWS, from when we started on it 2 years ago to what it looks like right now. I mean, I feel like every week there's an update email from AWS about all of the great new services and features that they've got. And I'm like, man, who can keep up with all of this stuff? But that has been probably the biggest challenge, is just around the technology and developing who we are in that sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And there's obviously, everything's changing so quickly, so it's almost impossible to always be 100% up to date on exactly what's going on. As you said, AWS, Amazon's pushing new updates every week, it feels like. So
well, and you find yourself in this posture of, is that something I even need to care about? Right? You can't always go try out every new service that they come up with, but you want to be on top of things so that, somebody comes at you and goes, hey, have you tried this great new thing? And you don't want to be the guy going, I've never even heard of what you're talking about. Right. So even assessing what's available and is that the right thing for us, and being disciplined enough to go, that's cool, we're not implementing that right now, is something that I think actually we've been pretty good at. There's been a lot of temptations along the way to say, a client might ask us for something, say, hey, would you write it in this language? Go, or something like that. And while we have people who have played in it, we kind of take a step back and go, no, we're far better at Node and Python and JavaScript than we are in this great new thing over here. And I'm sure it's fantastic, but that's just, we got to stay to what we're good at, be true to that, especially given our size. And I think we've been pretty good about that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And just for context, Nick, what is the size of Rebar?
Yeah, we are 12 people. We're a 12-person team, 8 developers, 4 delivery managers and client managers, and myself.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for that context.
Yep.
In terms of, I guess you kind of touched on one of the benefits, but I imagine that another benefit of being under the Capra lens is that you are also able to have, like, as you said, you were seeing clients that were having these problems specifically, right? So in terms of the demand, you have, right, a direct line potentially, right, to some of these potential customers, because you have been doing the consulting and essentially have been getting feedback and research along with the regular consulting practice.
Right. Yeah, we have. I mean, that was a big part of why this made sense, right? Is because we had existing relationships to sell into. That was absolutely a factor. I will say, though, that, we came out of a consulting company, which those types of services are 100% sold through relationships, right? Nobody goes to a consulting website and signs up and says, hey, let's start working together. That's just not how that works. You're in the industry, you meet people, and you sell through relationships. And we've done a good bit of that at Rebar too, but at the same time, we're also selling a product. So how to get in front of people and sell that product, and which is a very different mindset from a sales and marketing perspective. That's been another bit of a challenge for us, right? How to message that, how to get out there, you market that through very different channels than you do consulting. And so that has been another learning experience for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Nick. And I think I said Capra, I meant to say Capra. So in terms of
that's okay.
Consulting there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the subscription specifically and subscription models in general.
Mm-hmm.
So can you first kind of, we hear this all the time. I'm sure people are mostly familiar, but can you just kind of give an overview of what a subscription business is and maybe why it is an attractive business model?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in subscription and payments for close to 20 years now, which puts me into subscription at a time before subscription was really cool. It is certainly taken on a life of its own in the past 5 years. And in a lot of ways, subscription got a bad rap for a whole lot of reasons there, of people being, at times, the perception was they were being coerced into signing up for things that they didn't know that they were going to be billed for on a recurring basis, whether, that those were travel clubs or discount clubs or things like that. And so, that combined with, okay, now there's the internet and you can buy anything on the internet. And now everybody wants a piece of the subscription business industry. So they're offering it in a lot of these ways, was kind of, it earned that for a lot of very good reasons. But what I will say I've seen recently is there's a lot of organizations now that want to really take care of their customer. And what subscription does so great is ongoing engagement with the end consumer. You're really creating a relationship here that goes on for a period of time. It's not transactional, right? Where you've gone to a website, you've bought something, I've shipped it to you or sold it to you in retail, and now that relationship is over, unless I can find a way to bring you back again for the same product, a different one or whatever, right? So that's always been the challenge of retail, is keeping the consumer coming back. And it's a big reason why loyalty programs and things like that were out there. I think what's interesting now is we're seeing a bit of a gray between those two concepts of loyalty. Thank you for continuing to come back and be a customer, with subscription, which is, okay, pay to almost be a customer and get a certain set of benefits to go along with it. There's a lot of gray area there, but I think, the ongoing engagement with the consumer is a big thing that everybody loves about subscription and wants as part of that. And then the other big one is predictable, ongoing, recurring revenue. I mean, what CFO doesn't love that, right? Being able to, look out and forecast that, we're going to make $1 million this month and we're going to be 1.2 next and 1.5 the month after that, whatever the case may be. But that does so much for being able to predict, the growth of the business, really, where it is now, where can we focus marketing, where can we spend CapEx, where should we spend, dollars on sales and business development. It just makes the organization way more predictable than it would be in a typical retail relationship, where you're subject to so many ebbs and flows of consumer behavior or the economic environments. Subscription is just far more predictable.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. If you know when your customers are on for whatever, a year subscription, right, then you can that you're going to get that revenue, or however you structure it.
Yeah.
I guess one nuance there, I think, could you talk about how a business actually recognizes that revenue, right? Because there are some nuances, because you see different models where it's you build monthly or you pay up front for the year. Can you talk about that aspect of it? Because there are some technical nuances to recognizing subscription revenue.
Absolutely. You're touching on there one of the bigger complexities about subscription that a lot of people don't appreciate if they haven't been there, done that before. But if you talk about monthly subscriptions, you're typically recognizing that revenue in the month that you bill and collect that payment from the customer. When you start talking about greater frequencies, quarterly, annual, and beyond, you need to amortize that revenue over the life of the contract with the customer. So if I'm signing up today for a 1-year contract, $120 a year, the typical revenue recognition process is to recognize $10 per month over the life of that. So while you may have received $120 cash today, you're going to amortize that revenue over the course of a year. So really spread it out in terms of your P&L. Now, that can get even far more complicated when you start talking about things like proration. What are the refund terms of a customer? Are they entitled to money back in the event that they decide to cancel before the end of that term? What term length are they committing to upfront? Even though it's a monthly relationship, are they committing to 6 months or a year upfront? All of these things come into play in terms of when and how you recognize that revenue over the life of the relationship. So this is where certainly accountants come into play here and love to audit these kind of things and look at your policies around it. But that's certainly one of the complexities of subscription that if you're thinking about it, you have to contend with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and thanks for kind of breaking that down, because there are, at a high level, understanding subscriptions is relatively simple. But when you start thinking about all those other scenarios, cancellations, different types of billing terms, someone upgrades or downgrades mid-contract, what do you do?
Yes.
It's a lot more complicated.
And as much as there are certainly GAAP accounting rules around those kind of things, there's no two business seems to handle this exactly the same, right? Some love to say, okay, your cancellation term is you can cancel anytime, but we won't bill you again, right? So if you cancel in the middle of the month, you can continue the service through the end of that month or that billing period, but you won't be billed any further. Others have said cancel anytime, for a prorated refund for the amount you have left in your term. So you have to hold back revenue in the event that, they do cancel, and cash for that matter. And then now you start getting to what you were touching on. So mid-cycle upgrades, downgrades. Right? What happens if in the middle of the cycle, you go from what would be a $10 a month billing up to a $15 or $20 a month billing? Do you bill for the difference and give access to the benefits now? Do you wait till the next billing period? And we've seen every flavor of this possible out there. And that has big implications on revenue recognition.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you start thinking about all those cases, it obviously starts to become a little bit more complex than on the surface level.
Yeah.
Can you talk about transaction recycling and why that's important to a subscription business? And if you could define that to start with, I think that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So to define that is any time that you go out to collect a payment from a customer, typically to a credit card, sometimes to a DDA account or whatever other payment method it is, but you get back a decline. So that transaction is declined for, let's just say, insufficient funds or some other reason code. And you, because of that particular reason, have the ability to try it again at a different point. So it could be that the customer maxed out their credit card, or in the case of a debit card, just didn't have enough money in their account to collect it. So when you're a subscription business, every subsequent transaction, recurring billing with a customer is where a merchant initiates that transaction, right? It's not a customer interaction at that point, the way a retail transaction is. It's a merchant initiated transaction. And so you don't have the customer there on the other end of the line to just provide you with a different credit card. You're going to want to take every opportunity you can to try to collect from that card. And in most cases, that involves transaction recycling. So the science of it is when you start looking at decline codes, the type of payment method that you're dealing with, whether that's an ACH, a credit card, a debit card, a prepaid reloadable, non-reloadable, and start going into all of the different data points you have to decide what's my strategy for recycling to try to collect from that customer. Because when you're at scale as a subscription business, even a few basis points here and there could mean a whole lot of money to the bottom line in additional collected revenue. Which is why it's one of those things when you're a startup subscription business and you're just trying to go out and acquire new customers and put things into the top of this funnel as quickly as possible. Transaction recycling is not at the top of your list, nor should it be at that point, really. You're building your business, you're going out and acquiring customers. But at some point you reach that impetus of, now this is something that I really need to focus on. And that doesn't always mean go hire the people and build the systems to do it. There's a lot of great providers out there and subject matter experts who can help you with these strategies. But you need to start focusing on it. Because if you're at 10 million a month and you're talking about 50 basis points of improvement, and when we've seen improvements into 2 to 5% collection rates month over month, that can be millions of dollars to the bottom line.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate you defining that, because I wasn't 100% sure what transaction recycling is. And I see, there's definitely an importance, especially as you said, as you get to scale in terms of really understanding how to do that.
And there's a lot of different nomenclature out there for it. Rebilling, decline salvage, everybody's got their little flavor twist on what they want to call that. But, it's just any situation where you're not able to collect payment from a customer and you have some sort of strategy. It's also called dunning, where you try to reach out to the customer, rebuild the customer, and really do what you can to try to keep them, right? Because you don't want to have to cancel them because you can't collect payment from them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That wouldn't be a good experience to the consumer, especially if they're using it, or whoever the end customer is. So to kind of recap, you mentioned that there were two main things that make business subscription, or the subscription model, enticing to businesses. You said closer closer ongoing relationship with the customer, and then also the predictability of revenue. Are there any other things when you think about the benefits, whether it's a company that's either weighing adding a business subscription, or someone just starting out wondering if that's the business model that they should utilize moving forward? Other things that they should be thinking about? Yeah,
I think one thing that probably about roughly the past 5 years has taught us is, as subscription has proliferated, there's been a lot of businesses that you would have thought, how would subscription ever make sense here, that gave it a go, and some worked and some didn't, right? The Volvo or Ford car subscriptions, I mean, it's not entirely different than lease, but they tried to package everything together and make it simpler, and and roll through the app and subscribe to a car, and Volvo still has theirs. I think Ford dropped their program, but just one of those things where you were like, who would have ever thought that I could just subscribe to a car, and get maintenance and insurance included. Dyson experimented with subscription vacuum cleaners in Japan and other countries of, somebody ships out and you pay a monthly fee to have a vacuum cleaner, but I don't have to worry about maintenance here. And when the thing wears out, I just send it back. And there's a company in LA called Furnish Now, which is kind of high-end modern furniture that you can subscribe to, choose your term length, choose what pieces you want, and they'll bring it to your house and put it in your living room. So there's just so many interesting ways that people have thought about subscription. But I think, this is all really about meeting customers where they want to be met, and offering them products and services in a way that they want. That doesn't mean subscription needs to be your only way that you interact with your customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the most effective models out there in a lot of cases, hybrid models, where they're able to offer a subscription service with add-ons that you can purchase things over time, or a certain set of products that are just subscription based and others that are purely, retail one-time transactions. But just giving that flexibility, I think is key today. I mean, customers expect it now, right? They don't want to go to a website, see one product, 1 month, and that's my only option, monthly recurring billing. They want the flexibility, and, features today like pause features where customer just doesn't want or need the product for a few, maybe a 3-month period, right? They're able to pause it instead of canceling the way others would in the past. I mean, that level of flexibility is what customers expect. And I think it's kind of the next evolution of subscription that are now going to become table stakes, right? It's what customers are going to expect. If you're going to go out to market, you just really need to have these things.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Nick. And you kind of alluded to a couple of them and gave some examples of ones that maybe didn't work as well, or people that were trying things. But when you think about a company or an example of someone that's done this really well, who comes to mind?
Well, I mean, kind of the standard torchbearer in our industry is Netflix in a lot of ways, right? They have done so well as a business. Digital product, but they've made it very easy for customers to sign up, upgrade, downgrade, cancel. They've been very transparent. In fact, earlier in 2020, they canceled hundreds of thousands of members proactively because they looked at usage and decided that these people are paying for this, but they don't seem to be using it. So they sent them an email and said, we're about to cancel you unless you reach out to us. And they proactively did it. I mean, how many companies would do that, right? Actively turn off customers because they felt like it was the right thing to do. And, certainly there's an element of PR and that goes along with that. But just, organizations that just keep their customers' best interests in mind and build up that goodwill, I think it goes a long way. And in terms of longevity and subscription, keeping those customers for months and hopefully years, I mean, taking care of them is going to be paramount now. They don't expect to just sign up and then never think about the subscription again. They want to continue using your product. So reminding them when they're not using it, when they're not taking full advantage of everything that they're entitled to by being a member, I think is going to be key to winning, instead of just signing them up and hoping they don't remember that they've got it and hope that, they don't cancel for months down the road.
Yeah, which goes back to when you were talking about kind of subscription having that bad rap, because that's kind of what it was.
It was,
20, 30 years ago.
Right. Subscription, the earliest forms of subscription were certainly insurance, right? Where it was, okay, I'm going to go sign up for term life insurance, AD&D, hospital protection, whatever. And you would pay these monthly fees. But in those cases, both the consumer and the provider both hoped you wouldn't have to use it, right? It was just, okay, it's there in case you need it. We both hope you don't. Unfortunately, that doesn't work with every product, right? A lot of these products, especially things like, the streaming wars that are going on right now, everybody's lighting up their own service. Everybody's going direct to consumer with that offering of sign up for $5, $6, $10, $15 a month, whatever it may be. And now we're even starting to see bundling, right? The Disney, Hulu, ESPN bundle, which is starting to feel like it's turning right back into what cable was, right? We're signing up for a whole bunch of stuff that we're not actually going to use, but those models are now out there, and I think streaming is definitely one of those industries that make a heck of a lot of sense for subscription. E-learning during the pandemic absolutely took off. People sitting at home wanting to pick up new skill sets or needing to pick up new skill sets, to retrain or repurpose themselves, certainly took off. And then, box of the month clubs, everybody shopping online and, would love to have that guaranteed delivery or ongoing delivery of whether that's coffee or air filters or, any kind of product that makes sense on a recurring basis. I mean, those things are great. Amazon does this too, right? There's the subscribe and save concept, which they are offering certain products that have no business being subscribe and save on their website, but they still manage to do it. So you got to be careful with it too, right? You don't want to have customers thinking that, oh, these people don't really know what they're doing. So there's a healthy balance there, but there's still lots of opportunities.
No, absolutely. And Nick, you kind of started to allude this here at the end, but when you think about some of the pitfalls or some of the bad things, right, about the industry, what are some of the things that are really important to avoid if you're going to roll out a new subscription business model?
Yeah, I have touched on this a little bit, but the concept of, or the pitfall of setting it and forgetting it.
Mm-hmm.
So some aspect of your business, whether that's your marketing engine, your subscription billing engine, customer service, when you're starting up and you're wanting to scale, you're all just about your product and getting new customers in, right? Getting them signed up. And that's great. But you might be tempted to make very short-term decisions to get up and running as quickly as possible and not think about the fact that, hey, we're going to grow here. When we get to 1 million in annual recurring revenue, that's a good time to then say, all right, let's revisit these things, right? So as much as tempting as it is to think about the short term and the now, you need to start when you can start thinking about what the future is going to look like, and at least put milestone or gates out there to say, I'm going to revisit this at this point or at that point. Because like I said, small tweaks here and there as you're scaling can add big dollars to the bottom line. They help you retain customers, build better relationships. It's not just all revenue based, right? It's the health and growth of your business and a whole lot of aspects. So that's probably the most common pitfall I've seen is just, I've seen so many payment processing contracts, which were, well, we signed up for this 5 years ago and we just kept doing it. And you start looking at it going, you guys are paying 4% of every transaction, on just accepting a credit card. That made sense when you were collecting $1,000 a month. Now that you're in millions, you are effectively just giving it away. And, not knowing that you need to revisit those things is, hey, you don't know what you don't know, right? But, seek help when you need it.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. And yeah, that balancing the short-term needs and then the long-term. And then, as you said, as you get to that scale, revisiting some of the decisions that you made when you were smaller, right, and a 4% transaction fee didn't make as much of a dent in your bottom line.
Right. Exactly.
So Nick, in terms of entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs that are just starting out, what advice do you have for those folks that are just starting to build a business from your own experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a temptation to think that just because an idea is a good idea that it will work, right? There's a lot of other factors that go into account, right? There's market opportunity. There's a lot of just being in the right place at the right time. Heck, even if you have a good idea today, by the time you're able to launch it 6 months, a year down the road, it might not be a good idea anymore, or somebody else already did it, right? So I think flexibility is the number one thing that you have to keep in mind when you're starting up a business and as you're growing it. I talked about pro formas before and trying to forecast what you think your business is going to do over a 3-year period. And, being flexible enough to say, all right, this was our hypothesis. This is what we thought was going to work, but now we're going to have to pivot a little bit and go over here. Or heck, this was a much bigger opportunity than we thought it was going to be. So we're going to direct our business over there. Keeping that flexibility as you grow is I think very important to scaling it and growing it and giving yourself the most opportunities for success, right? There's been some of the best laid plans with some of the best entrepreneurs who just unfortunately just hit the wrong thing at the wrong time. And then we've all seen other people where we go, how did they start a business that's this successful? Because I don't know how this person did it. And, there are luck factors involved. I mean, let's be honest here, but, you want to give yourself as many opportunities of success and de-risk yourself as much as you can as you're trying to grow. And that's, I think, what we're all trying to do, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And then, the luck factor, right? If someone tried to start Uber in the 90s, good luck, right?
Yeah,
but the 2010s or whenever they started, now everyone's got a cell phone, cell service, and a map on their phone. So this is going to work, it can work.
All of the factors lined up at the right time. And man, that was lightning in a bottle. Exactly.
So Nick, in your experience, having led teams as well, previously, as well as from an entrepreneur perspective, this is a question from a good friend that really focuses on leadership. So what questions do you like to use in your meetings with others to help solve problems or reshape thinking and essentially drive great results?
Interesting question. Would you say that's more internally focused or externally focused, like with clients?
I would say internally. Okay. It's more motivating yourself or your team to achieve and get great results.
Gotcha. Well, certainly what motivates any two people are never the exact same thing, right? There's a it's easy to make the assumption that what motivates me is going to motivate, someone else. And that's certainly true in some cases, but it's not true across the board. And we don't all weight things exactly the same, right? And certainly even for me, that has changed so much throughout my career and stages of life, now being, a father of two and, having a family at home, what is important to me now versus just, 7 years ago to now are two very different things. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, but, meeting people where they're at in their stage of life, where, their career goals, I think is now more essential than ever. There was, when I was coming into the workforce, those that were, leading and managing me at the time, there was that we refer to it as old school management mentality now, but it was I'm going to treat everyone the same. It's fair, but I'm going to treat everybody the same. And, you just need to fit into into these molds. These are the expectations, meet it or don't. And there's the door, right? That was kind of that old school mentality. And that has changed so much as I've progressed through my career and led people. And now, especially managing a team of developers who are in very high demand, have lots of opportunities if they want to go somewhere else. I've trying to make people stay, right? And give them all of the motivation in the world to stay and not go externally. You're going to fight a losing battle if that's what you're trying to do. I've taken the approach of, and many others have, of, career development, right? Come here, learn with us, learn as much as you can. You'll deliver the value to us, but you'll learn from us as well. And if in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that means moving on to the next opportunity that's going to help you grow in your career, I will give you a glowing recommendation, that wish you well and hope to keep in contact along the way. And by the way, some of these people end up coming back, right? Yeah. So just learning what motivates people differently, where they are, where they want to go, and hearing that, and then trying to adapt, their career path, their goals and their outcomes to that is, I think, what part of modern management is all about.
Yeah, I love that. I love that kind of mentality, right? Of putting the person first. Hey, this might just be a temporary stop, over the next 2-5 years. So, ultimately we're investing in you as a person and beyond just, hey, trading your skills for a paycheck. I think that's absolutely critical.
We've had that happen. We've hired junior developers, senior developers, everywhere in between, but especially with the younger ones, they'll come in and we'll invest in them, right? They're not coming in the door adding value day one. It's a road of, showing them how this corporate world actually works. And, you're not writing code for the sake of code. It's actually solving a problem, so teaching them those things and how to do it and learning from the senior developers. We've had those that have moved on, to other new opportunities, and we've wished them well, and we've got value from them, and I think they've got value from us, and that's been actually quite rewarding to see. Even if there's those that I wish were still here, but at the same time, it's been fulfilling to see them grow in their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nick, when you think about yourself, and this is more just focused on you personally, how do you define success?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to define that, aren't there? I mean, certainly there's the aspect of building and growing this business, right? I want Rebar to be around for years to come. We are not building this thing to go sell it next year for as much money as possible. We're really trying to build a business here that's going to be around for the long haul. I plan on being here. I want as many of the team members to be here for as long as they want to. That sustainability is actually success to me. Not looking to, like I said, cash out on the near term here. This is build a business, something that I personally can do for many years to come, and anybody who wants to be a part of it. So I think that's the primary lens of success that, we're trying to supply here. It's not grow 200% every year. Those things will hopefully happen, and that organic growth won't be the same over time. But that's the biggest measure to me here is sustainability.
Yeah. I love that definition. Yeah. Sustainability. It's so crucial. And I think that, there's kind of this push in society now, right? Where there's the short-term thinking, but I think there's this kind of push back towards long-term sustainable thinking across the board in business, right, and all kind of facets of life that's starting to come back. And I really love that definition.
I do too. And I'm glad you highlighted that, because I think that's a change that's happening in subscription too. And as we've talked about, it used to be set it and forget it. And now it's all about that longer term relationship with your customer, right? So to have that long term thinking means I might make a short term decision today, which isn't so great for my bottom line, but it builds a better relationship with that customer. It builds goodwill with new customers and what others hear about. So, being in this all for the long haul, that sustainability is a trend that I'm seeing too, and I'm very excited to see.
Yeah. So Nick, to kind of wrap things up, you're in this fintech space, this payment space. Let's talk a little bit about money. Could you describe your relationship with money and maybe how it's changed over the years? You mentioned, you're a father of two, entrepreneur, all these things. Can you talk about your relationship with money?
Yeah, that's it has absolutely changed over time. I've been doing this for a long time. That the previous company that I worked at, we went through the 2008 financial crisis and, saw so many people lose their jobs. And through that time, I kept mine. We were actually, as an organization, weathered it fairly well. So, I was thankful to come out on the other side of that. And we grew in a lot of ways. And, through my career, was able to kind of, move up the ladder, so to speak, within a very large organization, thousands of employees. So I was thankful for that. But, what motivated me through there, the career growth was a big part of it. But in terms of the money, as I moved up, there was increased bonus opportunity. There was, of course, increased salary. There was access to stock options and things like that, which were all fantastic, right? Then I came over to a consulting business, which was very much hand to mouth. I came in as a consultant, but was also out there hunting and farming, new opportunities as well. And so went to sort of a pseudo sales type compensation where, have a salary, but have the opportunity to realize upside from those types of activities as well, to now being really a business owner, having an equity stake in this company and still collecting that paycheck. And I'm able to take care of my family and all of that. And that's of course job one, right? Especially as a father, as a parent, to take care of my family is one. I'm now able to do that, but I'm really building for the future here, right? This isn't about, short-term bonuses and things like that. This is about building a business that's going to be around for years to come, hopefully as an asset one day that, whatever the road takes us, down the road, but that's really the focus now. So that relationship with money in terms of like, okay, you're young and you're hungry and you're wanting to get out there and you're doing all of those things to grow yourselves and grow your career. That was what my early career was, but that's not the same motivation anymore. Now it is more about steady state, building a foundation that'll be there in the future and really growing that.
Yeah. I'm almost hearing this legacy sort of kind of undertone, and maybe I'm labeling it incorrectly, but that long-term, that sustainability, again, that kind of like that legacy.
It is. And I think some of that comes from working for, corporate America for 11 years and working really hard, saved and made that company a whole lot of money in a whole lot of ways. But, and I had career growth, and I'm not saying in any stretch that I'm ungrateful for those opportunities, but we made other people a whole lot of money. And so, now being in a position of, okay, that hard work is, benefiting me and my team and, building this business, it's a very different mentality, right? I'll gladly put in the extra hours knowing that, okay, this is all about the future. This is every minute I put into this business is an investment. And I try to look at it that way.
Yeah. I love that mentality. Yeah. So what would you say is the best investment that you've made, Nick?
Ooh, besides Shopify a couple of years ago, that was a good one.
Yeah. They've done very well, especially throughout 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. That's had an insane return rate. Actually, I invested at Amazon at a pretty good time too. So I've had a couple of good wins from a pure stock perspective. From investing can be a lot of different things, right? It can be money, it can be capital, but I don't want to sound cheesy here at all, but, investing time with my family, with my kids, I've gotten some good advice, which is, it's easy to be focused on business, and that is very much taking care of your family too, right? Having that, building that business and investing in the future will benefit them as well. But don't make that at the expense of everything that you can experience now, especially when they're young, being able to spend time with them, help coach on my son's baseball team, and, have dates with my daughter, all of those kind of things are super important too, and try to take advantage of those things. So that sort of investment in those relationships are important to me. So I think, and, we made the choice to have kids, but they give me every bit as much as I give them. It's super rewarding. So that's always a good investment.
Yeah. I love that. I don't think it's cheesy at all. I think it's, if it's the truth. On the other side, the flip side, Nick, what would you say is the dumbest money mistake that you've made?
Wow. That's a good question. Well, I made some decisions. This actually goes back to my music industry days, right? I think I had that bit of an entrepreneurial spirit back then too. I got a bit out over my skis a couple of times in areas where I thought, hey, I don't know how to do this, but somebody's asking me to do it, so I'll just figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to say I got myself into trouble, but I certainly got myself into situations like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And, fumbled my way through it. It was a bit of fake it till you make it. But, it's easy to look back on those kind of things and be like, hey, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, I think I should have. They made me grow. They stretched me in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise. And some of those were like making investment in going out and buying equipment so that I could, go out and start, having other revenue streams, right? Like audio systems and lighting systems and things like that. I was like, I am going to start up the greatest new company. And one of the hardest lessons I learned at one point was I had a partner who was one of my best friends, and we started a business and it was growing quickly. And then I came to find out that he was actually laundering from the business. So to find that out in the way that I found out was somebody who was one of my best friends. And you hear this story many times over, right? It's certainly not a unique story, but it was more, it's to have to fold the business because of that, but it just hurt from a relationship perspective too, that somebody had that much trust in, did something and didn't really even apologize for it either. That was very disappointing. So that was probably one of my hardest lessons I ever had to learn.
That's tough. Yeah. The relationship, and because you're not just losing out on a, monetarily, so to speak, right? Because it's the relationship too. So it's a double.
It is. Yeah, it is. And that was a business we were trying to build for the future too. Right. And that was a lot of time and effort that, just kind of went down the drain overnight.
Yeah. So Nick, what would you say is the biggest challenge facing everyday people when it comes to finances?
Knowing where their money's going is certainly a difficult one. It's funny, working in payments, one of the things that we deal with a lot are billing descriptors. And these are the things that tell you on your statement where you just shopped, right? You've got the merchant name, but then you've kind of got the billing descriptor. When you're shopping at Amazon or Target or Walmart or something like that, it's pretty straightforward. But people are buying a lot of things online now. And particularly with subscriptions, things may show up on your statement that cause you to go, I don't remember signing up for this, right? It's not maybe the product name or the company name that you remember signing up for, but that's, where it came from. And so that can create a lot of challenges for the everyday person in trying to understand, hey, where's my money going? What did I buy here? What did I pay for? Maybe it was some other card holder on my account signed up for it. And keeping track of those transactions, where that's money's going, it can be really difficult today. I mean, me and my wife, we struggle with it sometimes of, did you do this? Did I do that? And, what was this for? And then budgeting accordingly, I think in terms of just personal money is one of the bigger challenges today, because we're using our debit cards a heck of a lot more than we ever did cash, so it can be difficult to keep up with. And there's great tools out there, but they're only so smart, right? They can't tell you that, hey, you guys spent $1,500 on going out to eat this month. Maybe don't do that next month, right?
Yeah.
I need somebody to tell me that. Fortunately, 2020, that wasn't too difficult, but it certainly was in years past.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you sitting down and sharing your story, your experience, and a bit about what you're building at Rebar Technologies. I'd love to give you the last word, and please also let the audience know how they can connect with you if they're interested in Rebar Technologies, or I believe you've got your own podcast as well. So talk a little bit about that.
We do. Yeah. Thanks. This has been a lot of fun for me. So certainly appreciate you having me on. It's been a fun conversation. They can find more about Rebar at rebartechnology.com is our website. But we love to have conversations. So, if there's any questions about payments, starting a subscription business, we'd love to just share information, right? It doesn't have to be some sort of formal anything. We'd love to help out people who are trying to get in. So send us an email, info@Rebar Technology. Can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. And we started up a podcast of our own. It's called Subscription Scaled. And as it sounds, it's about growing your subscription business, how to get really up to the next level. Lessons learned from people who have been there, done that. So you can just search for Subscription Scaled on your favorite podcasting service. But thanks for the opportunity to share all that. But it's been fun. It's been a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks, Nick. And we'll have to talk again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again.
On your way out, please go ahead and pound that subscribe button. If you haven't already, go ahead and share the podcast with others. It's the only way the community grows and others hear these incredible stories from entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs just like Nick. So that's it for today's episode of the Silicon Alley Podcast. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Have a very profitable day.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying I'll never